Hello, spiritual seeker. This is Deepa Liu, and I'm the creative mystic. I ring this bell to awaken the divine presence within you. So, today, here at the Creative Mystic podcast, we're going to talk about creativity, the window to your soul. And, this was a download I got in meditation about really talking about this and really wanting to help people to understand the power of creativity, the importance of creativity, and how it helps you to connect with your soul, with your one true self. Because if you're tuned into this, you must have some interest in knowing, who your soul is, what your soul is, and how creativity can help that. And so, what exactly is this soul? The soul is that incorporeal essence of a living being is how they define it in the dictionary. But we all know the soul is something that is, that we can't see. We can't explain it. It's an energy. It's our existence, our true existence, which is non-physical. And so, creativity is something that can actually help you connect with the truth in your heart, with your soul. See, so what I've found with working with most people and even in with myself throughout a lot of my life was that, my soul was covered up. My true self was covered up by so many layers of conditioning of, what my parents taught me to do, what they believed. I grew up not even believing or knowing or even having my own choice in what college I went to. That's how much my parents had conditioned to me, especially my mom. I was 5 years old, and I remember my mom coming up to me and saying to me, "Don't you wanna go to college, when you grow up?" And me going, "Oh, yes." And her saying, "And don't you wanna go to UC Berkeley?" And so by the time I got to be a teenager in high school, I applied to UC Berkeley, and I only applied to one other college, because I just, I thought, "Well, this is where I'm going, UC Berkeley." I've been programmed for this since the day I was a little kid. And so what happened? I went to UC Berkeley, and it wasn't until I got away into college that I started to realize how much programming and conditioning that my parents had done that maybe I didn't really believe anymore, or maybe that wasn't really me. And even then, I still did not know. It wasn't until I got into the spiritual path, which still didn't come until after college. I started to get curious about, spirituality and started to go to some other people's churches and such because, I was agnostic and trying to question, what do I believe? And then I found Buddhism and realized, okay, this works for me. Like this is me because I didn't have to decide, do I believe in God or do I not? Now, I've shared in past stories about how I'm interfaith. I'm an interfaith minister now, and I now look for all the threads of truth in all spiritual paths and honor them all. And so, I don't question anymore. But there was still this unfoldment that had to happen of me continuing to let myself out of the closet completely. Now, and I'm talking about out of the closet spiritually, because I had come out of the closet as far as with, the sexual preference of that I have a wife, but I hadn't come out of the closet spiritually in all ways because of the conditioning that I got growing up in a family of not really believing in anything spiritually. I just thought, well, how could I be this spiritual being? How could I be this? How could this be my true self? Someone who's so focused on spirituality. And so that came as a process. Now, I was, on the spiritual path for many years, but still not visual, still not connected to my spirit guides. All that came later after I started using my creative powers and having creative projects and things I wanted to create that were sacred art, like I do. I always talk about that. That's when things really started to open up. And that's where I started to like see that creativity is like a window to your soul. It's a window to you connecting with your one true self. And so I saw that when I actually, painted every day, my gifts, my spiritual gifts began to expand. I became aware of more of them. I started becoming visual when I wasn't before. I started having a relationship with my spirit guides where I wasn't before. All these things started happening that didn't happen before. Why? Because I didn't have access to my soul at that deep level. Even though I'd been on the spiritual path a long time, I wasn't able to let that part of me out because I was afraid. I was kind of stuck in a paradigm, a belief system that prevented me from identifying as that spiritual being that could possibly have a connection with spirit guides or be visual. And so creativity helped open all that up. Creativity by me having the desire to create these sacred art portals where they were blessings and doing it on an ongoing basis. I was actually doing it almost every single day there for a while. That I started to see, oh, these little inklings coming up. And that's the thing about the window to your soul is you get these little inklings, these little desires. And this is the first key you have to start to notice. These little inklings, these little desires are actually little parts of your soul speaking to you, little parts of your true self. Because to me, your soul and your one true self, what's true, like if you want to follow your heart's desire, that's your soul. Your one true self, that's your soul, because we're really these spiritual beings having a human experience, being in the physical body, but our true selves are always trying to reveal themselves. And it's a matter of, how do we let ourselves listen? How do we let ourselves receive it? And how creativity helps that is when you start to create things without judgment. And here's the key. The key is without judgment. You can't be creating to be good. If you're trying to create to be good, then that's coming from your ego. But if you're trying to just be a conduit, a channel, which is what I do my best to do when I'm creating my sacred art portals, my spirit guide portals, the personal divine presence portals that I create for my clients, is I really just try to be this open channel, of what the divine is flowing through me and wanting me to create. And when I want to create, when I get into that space of creating, like I'm going to create something without judgment, without trying to be good, that's when flow happens. That's when I start to realize like, oh, there's my soul, there's me coming out. And that's what happened with when I started to create sacred art. I started to go to art lessons every day, and my teacher used to yell at me to relax, so I started incorporating my spiritual practices, my meditation, pranayama, some yoga postures, prayer. And then all of a sudden, oh, a desire comes up, a desire to create Yogananda. If you've heard a previous podcast where I had this desire, I really wanted to create Yogananda, paint him. He was my first person I ever painted. And I wanted to paint his painting to be like this portal, this doorway to the divine, where they would feel his power and vibration. I really wanted this to be where people felt blessed, but I kept it to myself. But that little desire is that window to your soul. The little desires you have, the little inklings that you like, what most people do is squish them. That's the beginning of opening up the window, of removing the curtain so you can see through the window to your soul. And you have to allow that by not squishing it. So the creative process of just doing creative acts connects you with the higher power, the infinite source. I tell people, spirit, God, that's the true source of all creativity. In fact, it's not really ourselves that are creating, it's this energy and vibration of spirit, of God, of Buddha, Allah, whatever you call it, but it's within us. It's our true selves. And when you connect and you actually go into the creative process without judgment, like I said, no judgment or trying to be good, because that's your ego trying to be good, and just let it flow, you'll find that little bits of you start to have desires of what you want to do with your art, what you want to do in your life, how you want to use the art or that you're creating. Now, you might not be an artist like an oil painter or a watercolorist or someone who wants to create art that goes on the wall. You might be someone who wants to do woodwork or you do cabinetry, all that's the creative process of like, how can I make a cabinet more beautiful or more functional, or that's all creativity. And so it doesn't have to be art, but as you get into that flow of connecting with creativity, that creative power within you, you will start to have things come out. So when you see artists create these amazing things, whether it's with wood or rocks or, whatever medium that you choose, because there is no right or wrong on the medium. It's just about the one that speaks to you. So that's where it starts to begin. Okay. You have to pick a medium that speaks to you. You don't try to pick a medium, like you don't pick oil painting because I do it. You pick oil painting because it speaks to you. Like it's something that you love to do. Like I love oil painting. And the reason why I love oil painting is it's a very forgiving medium. It really works with my process. I get these visions in meditation of like what I'm to create, but it's something I've seen in a vision, and I have to take it and put it in this little on this flat surface, trying to make it three-dimensional and make it what I saw, of which I'm trying to see use paint that I'm not quite sure how it's going to always react to get it to look like what I saw. And so that's a process that I have to do to have it happen. Okay. But why I love oil painting is because, like, if you put something on there and you go, yuck, you can cover it up. But the beauty about it is that with oil painting, things kind of bleed through where you can see it. And so, like, when I painted Our Lady of Guadalupe over there, now I know if you're driving in the car, you can't see what I'm pointing to, but Our Lady of Guadalupe was the second kind of person I painted, and it was the first color painting I did of a person. And so when I painted her at first on the background, I put this gray color up, and it looked really horrible. In fact, my teacher went by and said, "Oh," and I said, "Don't worry, that's not the end. It's just for some reason I was told to lay this down." And then I painted over it, and then I could see how the gray was kind of bleeding through the yellow and all the other tones. And so I saw how it enhanced, the portal of the painting, the portal. And so, I just would like get in divine flow and allow like what I was getting to put down. And, I had to stop that voice that would criticize and go, "Ooh, yuck." And one of the things I learned with creating or doing the creativity is there's an ugly stage in everything you're creating out there. And if you let your ego win out, where you say, "Ooh, yuck, this is terrible," and you throw it in the garbage, it's going to win. And you're not going to have that window to the soul experience. So you have to go through the process and let it go. Okay, how is this going to make it better? And just continue to paint. And so you can do that with other, items you're making, even if it's wood, and you have a little bloop, bloop, but the saw didn't quite go where I wanted, and then you go, well, how can this make it better? And then you can start to, redesign something that might even be something you never would have thought of without that little bit, what you thought was a mistake, yet it actually made it something even greater. And so that creativity is allowing the process. So when you're really wanting it to be the window to your soul, you follow those little inklings without judgment. You follow those little like, oh, this little like, I'm getting this feeling I should do this. And if you're an empath like me, you're going to get lots of feelings. I get feelings sometimes that just like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. That's what happened with my heart chakra angel that's behind me, is that I had a vision, but then when I started to create, the heart chakra angel portal, I realized, oh, it's supposed to be different than what I saw. And I just went with this feeling. And that's when she came out, or he came out, because there's no gender. I should say they came out. So I really encourage you to, what creative process can you start to do? What's your favorite creative medium? And I'd love to hear it in the chat. If you want to put something, put a little comment about, what your favorite creative medium is, because, I just love to support people in doing whatever medium they love. And then also, here's the key. You have to commit. You have to commit to doing it on a regular basis. So how often can you commit to utilizing and expressing your creative flow in what medium you love doing, whether it's for me, I did it, like 5 to 6 days a week back then. Now I do 2 or 3 days a week. I'd love to do more, but balancing between all my other things I love to do, like doing this podcast and getting to coach my spiritual success coaching clients, which I love to do too, I've had to bring it now back to like about 3 days a week that I paint. But I still try to bring in the creative energy, even if I'm not painting. So, how often can you commit to doing that, expressing your creativity? Because if you want to let your soul out, you have to commit to doing a creative projects, um, so that with the intent of knowing yourself. And that part of knowing yourself is not squishing or judging what you're creating, and that it's just knowing it's all a process. Okay. And so I'd love to hear from you. All right. Remember, greatness is within you. It's time to let it out. If you feel like this resonates with you, feel free to subscribe. I'd love to have you subscribe. And please, I'd love to hear what medium you would love to do with creativity and how you can start to, make that commitment to let your soul start shining through. All right. Have a miraculous day. Blessings.